Racist fireman humiliates black girl, but when he discovers her father is the police captain, he falls into total despair. What happens when prejudice disguises itself as respect? In a quiet town in the United States, where everyone knows everyone, the life of Maya, a black teenager, intertwines with that of Brandon, a respected firefighter, and Lieutenant William Carter, her father and head of the local police. Each of them carries their own struggles, but it is the interaction between them that will reveal the truths hidden in the shadows of a community that considers itself peaceful. At 16, Maya is a determined and intelligent young woman, standing out in a town where she is one of the few black girls. Since she was little, she learned to take pride in her roots, but that does not protect her from the looks of suspicion and subtle rejections she faces daily. Raised by William Carter, a solitary father striving to provide her with a safe and loving home, Maya finds herself in a world that often does not accept her. One summer afternoon, after school, she decides to attend an educational activity organized by firefighters in the central square. But as she approaches, she feels the weight of disdain and becomes the target of a humiliating comment from Brandon, which makes her feel even more out of place. Brandon, a man in his early 30s, has always been seen as a hero in town. However, behind his respectable image lies prejudice he has never bothered to question. When Maya approaches, he sees her as an intruder, someone who shouldn't be there, and his reaction reveals the weakness of his perspective. The confrontation is quick and painful, and Maya, embarrassed and hurt, walks away, fighting back the tears that threaten to spill. William Carter, a strict but fair man, is a respected authority figure in the town. Raising Maya alone after the death of his wife has not been easy, and he has always strived to protect her from any harm. Upon learning of the incident in the square, his indignation and sadness are palpable. He decides to confront Brandon, only to discover that the man who humiliated his daughter is someone he admired. This revelation leads him to a profound dilemma. How can a hero act so unjustly? The story unfolds as Brandon begins to reflect on his actions and the impact they had on Maya. Lieutenant Carter, determined to promote change in the community, challenges Brandon to participate in a program that fosters inclusion and respect. Brandon's journey, filled with self-assessment and challenges, forces him to confront his own limitations as he tries to repair the damage done to Maya. Maya, in turn, learns to cope with the pain of rejection, transforming her experience into a strength to fight for a future where everyone can be accepted, regardless of their differences. The relationship between her and Brandon evolves, creating a space for understanding and healing in a world that often seems divided by invisible prejudices. As the lives of these three characters intertwine, the story reveals the importance of empathy, courage, and the fight against injustices that often hide in plain sight. Maya felt lost in a sea of familiar faces, but everyone seemed strange. The central square was filled with children and adults, all excited about the firefighters' demonstrations. She had decided to go, hoping the activity would distract her from a tough week at school. However, as she approached Brandon, the firefighter everyone admired, the euphoria she felt was instantly replaced by a knot in her stomach. His gaze, which should have been welcoming, turned into a cold barrier, and his words cut like a blade. What should have been a day of learning turned into a moment of pain, and Maya walked away feeling tears sting her eyes. That experience was not new to her. Since she was little, Maya dealt with disapproving looks, with the feeling that she did not belong in that place. The weight of prejudice followed her like a shadow, and she wondered if she would ever escape it. At home, William noticed the change in his daughter's behavior. He felt that something was bothering her, but he didn't know how to approach her. The father had always strived to be her safe harbor, but Maya's pain was a silent storm he could not fully comprehend. With indignation pulsing in his chest, William decided to confront Brandon. The firefighter, who had always been an example of bravery and heroism, was about to discover that behind the mask he wore lay a much more complex reality. Upon confronting him, William felt a mix of anger and disappointment. He hoped Brandon would understand the seriousness of his actions, but the conversation soon turned into a clash. Brandon defended his comment, justifying that it was just a joke, but William could not accept that excuse. The relationship between them, built on respect and friendship, was beginning to crumble. Meanwhile, Maya struggled to regroup. She didn't want that incident to define her life, but the pain of disdain followed her. At school, she became the target of whispers and curious looks. The classmates who had once been friends now seemed distant, That made her question her own strength. Being the only black girl in her class had always been challenging, but at that moment, she felt completely alone. The feeling of helplessness led her to retreat to her room, immersed in thoughts. What could she do to change this situation? How could she turn the pain into something positive? In that moment of solitude, she remembered a teacher who had always encouraged her to fight for her rights. This teacher, Mrs. Jenkins, had gone through similar difficulties in her youth. Maya decided she needed to seek help, and as soon as school resumed, she went to Mrs. Jenkins' classroom. The teacher welcomed her with a warm hug, and Maya, in tears, told her everything that had happened. Mrs. Jenkins listened attentively, and her words were like a balm for Maya's soul. She encouraged her to express herself, to use her voice to speak out against injustices. Meanwhile, Brandon found himself in a cycle of reflection. The conversation with William had profoundly affected him, and after the incident, he began to question his own beliefs. He had never considered himself a racist, but the words said to Maya haunted him, and he couldn't ignore the pain he had caused. The pressure from the community made him feel torn. On one side was the image of the hero everyone expected him to be. On the other was the reality of who he really was. The dilemma led him to seek help, and he decided to enroll in a program about inclusion and diversity that the city was offering, even knowing that it could affect his standing in the community. The challenges that Maya and Brandon faced were different, but both were seeking a way to overcome the barriers that separated them. While Maya tried to find her voice and confidence, Brandon was on a path of self-evaluation, trying to understand how he could repair the damage caused. The friendship between them, which once seemed impossible, was beginning to form, but not without difficulties. The deep-seated prejudice in the community was still an obstacle to overcome, and both would need courage to face the truth. The lessons they would learn along the way would not only be about acceptance, but also about the strength they would find within themselves to fight against prejudice disguised as respect. Maya sat at the kitchen table, her gaze lost on some point. The silence of the house seemed to echo her concerns. The conversation with Mrs. Jenkins had been a relief, but the weight of Brandon's words still tormented her. She felt increasingly distant from her peers, as if an invisible wall separated her from them. The idea of talking about how she felt with someone other than the teacher made her nervous. What if no one else believed her? What if it was easier to remain silent? William, on the other side of the table, noticed the sadness in his daughter. He tried to find the right words, but frustration consumed him. He wanted to protect Maya, but he felt that his attempts to comfort her were insufficient. The conversation with Brandon had revealed not only the pain his daughter was facing, but also the fragility of the relationships he had built over the years. He knew he needed to be an example of support, but doubt overwhelmed him. How could he help Maya face a world that seemed so hostile? Meanwhile, Brandon was battling his own demons. After the discussion with William, he felt lost. Enrolled in the Inclusion and Diversity program, he hoped to find answers, but the reality was harsher than he imagined. The classes were challenging, and with each session, he was confronted with the truth of his actions. What had been a simple joke to him revealed itself as a reflection of a bigger problem that affected not only Maya, but the entire community. The discussions were intense, and he felt increasingly guilty. The voices of the other participants who shared their experiences of discrimination made him reflect on his own life and the choices he had made. Before we continue with this compelling story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. And let us know in the comments which city you are watching this video from. At school, Maya decided she needed to express herself, even though she was scared. As soon as the teacher called her for the presentation project on diversity, she saw an opportunity. With her heart racing, she began to gather her ideas and prepare a speech that would tell her story. But the more she worked, the more doubts arose. What if no one cared? What if people saw her only as the black girl instead of recognizing her value as a person? Those thoughts made her anxious, and sometimes she wondered if she was really capable of doing it. On the day of the presentation, the auditorium was full. Maya felt a flutter in her stomach as she stepped onto the stage. The gaze of her peers weighed heavily upon her, and her teacher's voice encouraged her to continue. The words began to flow, and as she spoke about her experiences with prejudice and loneliness, tears streamed down her face. But she did not back down. On the contrary, she felt a strength growing inside her. As she finished, a silence filled the room before applause began to echo. Some of her classmates looked surprised, while others approached to congratulate her. However, the feeling of victory quickly faded when she realized that Brandon was in the audience. He watched her with a mix of admiration and guilt. After the presentation, Brandon approached, and the words escaped his lips with difficulty. He apologized, but Maya's frustration resurfaced. "You don't understand," she replied. "It's not just about a joke. It's about how it makes me feel every day." Brandon's expression turned sad, and he realized that his actions had consequences that went beyond a mere comment. The relationship between them was complicated. Maya wanted to believe that he was trying to change, but the pain she felt was still fresh. Brandon, for his part, was determined to learn and fix what he had broken, but he knew that Maya's trust was something that would take time to rebuild. He began to get more involved in the community, participating in events and listening to the stories of others who faced discrimination. At the same time, Maya continued to strengthen herself. With the support of Mrs. Jenkins and her father, she began to understand that her voice was powerful and that she should use it to fight against injustice. But it wasn't easy. Every step she took brought her closer to her goals, but it also brought old wounds and insecurities to the surface. In a moment of weakness, she almost gave up on everything, feeling that the battle was too great for one person. However, looking back and seeing how much she had already overcome, she found the courage to move forward. Maya and Brandon's journeys were intertwined, and both needed to learn to deal with their flaws and seek mutual understanding. The friendship forming between them was still fragile, but little by little, they were ready to face the challenges life presented them together. The change wouldn't be easy, but the hope for a better future motivated them to keep fighting, not just for themselves, but for a more inclusive and welcoming community. Maya was at home, sitting in her room surrounded by books and piles of papers. She tried to concentrate, but her mind wandered between the memories of the presentation and the emotions that arose afterward. The conversation with Brandon still troubled her, and the words he had said haunted her. Part of her wanted to believe that he was really changing, but the other part felt betrayed. How could someone who had caused so much pain simply apologize and expect everything to be okay? Amid these troubled thoughts, Maya received an unexpected message. It was from Mrs. Jenkins, asking if she could come to school for a conversation. Initially, Maya hesitated, but she decided she needed guidance. Upon arriving at school, she found the teacher in her classroom, and her expression was one of genuine concern. Mrs. Jenkins explained that she had noticed the tension between Maya and Brandon and wanted to better understand the situation. During the conversation, Maya opened up. She talked about her insecurities, the pain she felt, and how the situation with Brandon had affected her self-esteem. The teacher listened attentively, validating her emotions and reinforcing the importance of expressing oneself. But at the end of the conversation, Mrs. Jenkins asked a question that took Maya by surprise. "What would you like Brandon to do to show that he is truly sorry?" That question echoed in Maya's mind as she returned home. She didn't have a clear answer, but the idea of confronting her feelings and thinking about how she could help Brandon understand the magnitude of his actions was in a way liberating. That night, as she tried to sleep, an idea began to take shape in her mind. What if, instead of simply rejecting Brandon, she gave him a chance to redeem himself? The decision wouldn't be easy, but she felt it would be an important step. The next day, Maya decided she would talk to Brandon. She found him in the school hallway and called him over to talk. Her heart raced as he approached. She began to speak, expressing not only her pain but also her hope that he could learn from his mistakes. She explained that we all make mistakes, but true growth comes from facing those mistakes head-on. Brandon listened to her in silence, his face heavy with regret. He had never considered the real impact of his actions until that moment. When Maya finished speaking, he remained silent for a moment that felt like an eternity. Finally, he replied, "I didn't know. I just wanted to make a joke, and now I see that I hurt you. I want to change, but I don't know how to do it the right way." Maya felt a mix of frustration and compassion. She knew that the path to change wouldn't be easy, but the sincerity in Brandon's words made her reconsider her own approach. They talked for a while longer, and in the end, Maya suggested that they could work together on a project about empathy and inclusion. Brandon accepted the proposal with gratitude. For him, it would be an opportunity to learn and redeem himself. For Maya, it would be a chance to better understand the challenges they faced. In the days that followed, their collaboration began to blossom. As they worked together, Maya noticed that Brandon was genuinely trying to change. He asked questions, sought to understand, and showed interest in her experiences. The friendship that once seemed impossible began to take shape, but insecurity still lingered in the air. Maya knew that trust isn't rebuilt overnight. It would be a long process full of ups and downs. The real test of the new friendship came at a school event where the inclusion projects would be presented. When the day arrived, anxiety took hold of Maya. She wondered if she had really made the right decision by opening up to Brandon. What if he disappointed her again? But looking at him, who seemed nervous and determined, a wave of hope washed over her. They were in this together, and regardless of the outcome, they could learn from each other. During the presentation, Maya and Brandon spoke about the importance of recognizing others' experiences and how small actions can have a big impact. They shared their stories, and the connection between the two seemed stronger than ever. When they finished, the auditorium was silent, but it was soon filled with warm applause. Maya felt a mix of relief and joy. But when the presentation ended, something unexpected happened. A group of students began making sarcastic comments about the project, and a wave of laughter swept through the room. Maya froze. The memory of the jokes she had faced before came rushing back. Brandon looked at her, and the desperation in his eyes was clear. He knew he had to act. With courage, he stood up and asked everyone to stop. "This isn't funny," he said. "We need to understand that everyone has their own struggles, and laughing at them is not the solution." Brandon's words echoed in the room, and for the first time the students stopped and reflected. Maya was moved to see the change in Brandon. He had truly understood the gravity of the words and was willing to stand up for what was right, even if it meant putting himself in a vulnerable position. After the event, Maya realized that she had taken an important step in her journey. She had chosen to open up to Brandon, and at that moment she saw that friendship, though fragile, had the potential to grow. The change she hoped to see was not just in Brandon, but also within her. She began to understand that sometimes forgiveness and understanding are the keys to true overcoming. Their relationship would still face challenges, but Maya was willing to confront them. From that day on, she felt stronger, more confident, and more prepared to fight not only for herself, but also for others facing the same battles. Life was not perfect, but there was a new path ahead, and she was ready to walk it. Maya felt a wave of emotions as she left the auditorium. What had started as a simple presentation on empathy and inclusion had now become a milestone in her life. Brandon had stood up to defend her, and that moment made her realize that he was truly trying to change. But even with this new hope, she couldn't ignore the anxiety that accompanied her. The weight of cruel words still echoed in her mind, and she wondered if she could really maintain this new friendship. In the following days, Maya felt the pressure increase. School seemed more intense than before. The laughter of the group that had mocked her echoed in her mind, and at every corner, she felt vulnerable. To complicate matters, some classmates began to whisper about her friendship with Brandon. He was known for his tasteless jokes, and many didn't believe he had really changed. Doubts about his sincerity began to haunt her, and she wondered if she had made the wrong decision by opening up. One afternoon, while studying in the library, Maya found a note left on her desk. It was from a classmate, Anna, inviting her to a study group. At first, she hesitated to accept, fearing the invitation might be a trap, but looking into Anna's hopeful eyes, she decided to go. During the meeting, Maya felt a little more at ease. The laughter and discussions about the lessons helped her forget, even if just for a moment, the insecurities that plagued her. After the meeting, Anna approached Maya and asked how she was feeling about Brandon. Maya hesitated but eventually shared her concerns. Anna listened attentively and with an understanding look said, "Friendship is a risk, Maya, but you can't let the fear of the past define what you can experience in the future." That statement resonated in Maya's mind, and she decided that she needed to give herself a chance. The next day, she and Brandon met again to continue the project. The exchange of ideas flowed naturally, and as they talked, Maya realized that Brandon was genuinely trying to be better. He asked questions about how she felt and made an effort to listen to her experiences. However, insecurity still lingered. In a moment of vulnerability, she decided to share her fears. "Sometimes I feel like all of this might be an illusion," Maya confessed. "What happens if you go back to being what you were before? What if I get hurt again?" The question hung in the air, and Brandon looked into her eyes, his expression filled with sincerity. "I don't want to hurt you again. I'm here because I want to change, and I want you to believe in me." His words were comforting, but doubt still remained. In a gesture of courage, Maya decided that she needed to confront not only her insecurities, but also the hurtful comments that arose at school. With Brandon's support, she decided to organize a workshop on empathy, where students could share their experiences and learn to respect one another. The idea of exposing herself again made her nervous but also excited. This would be an opportunity to show others that everyone has their struggles and that it is possible to promote change. In the days that followed, preparations for the workshop were intense. Maya and Brandon worked together, facing new challenges. Some students opposed the idea, mocking and saying there was no need to discuss such issues. This made Maya's heart tighten. The insecurities she had tried to overcome resurfaced, and she felt discouraged. But Brandon was by her side, encouraging her to keep going. "Don't give up, Maya. This is important. We can make a difference," he said. The day of the workshop arrived, and Maya was rushed and nervous. Looking at the auditorium, she saw familiar faces, but she also saw students who were not so friendly. Fear took hold of her, but remembering Anna's words, she decided it was time to assert herself. During the presentation, Maya spoke about her experiences, her struggles, and the importance of respecting one another. Brandon supported her from the side, and seeing his encouraging gaze gave her a wave of courage. In the end, the workshop became a space for dialogue. Students who had previously been skeptical began to ask questions and share their own experiences. Maya saw tears in some eyes, and it made her realize that her courage was having an impact. There was a path to understanding and change, and she was leading that path. After the event, Maya felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. She knew there would still be obstacles ahead, but the feeling of having exposed herself and promoted conversation made her stronger. Brandon approached her, a smile on his face. "You were amazing, Maya. I'm so proud of you," he said. That approval filled her with hope. The journey would be long, but with someone willing to grow by her side, she felt more prepared than ever to face what was to come. Maya was at a pivotal moment in her life. After the workshop on empathy, she felt she had taken a big step toward overcoming her struggles. The experience of exposing herself and sharing her battles had taught her that, despite the difficulties, she had the power to make a difference. However, challenges still lay ahead, and Maya knew she would need to confront not only the hurtful comments, but also her own insecurities. With the support of Brandon, who had become a true friend, Maya began to see the value in trusting people again. He had shown sincerity and a genuine desire for change, which made her feel more secure by his side. Their friendship evolved in a surprising way, and Maya realized that trust could be rebuilt, even after the disappointments of the past. One morning, while walking to school, Maya noticed that some students were still whispering about her and Brandon. The fear of being judged again began to creep into her thoughts. But instead of letting it bring her down, she decided it was time to face those feelings. Rather than hiding, she chose to assert herself. With growing determination, Maya began to remember Anna's words. "You can't let the fear of the past define what you can live in the future." Over the weeks, Maya started to get involved in other activities at school, such as clubs and events that promoted inclusion. Through this, she began to see that success was not just about winning debates or being popular, but about making a difference in the lives of those around her. Each interaction, each new friendship she cultivated, helped her understand that true wealth lay in human connections, not in material goods or in the approval of others. She also began to reflect on her experiences and what she had learned from them. The difficulties she faced were not just barriers, but opportunities for growth. Maya realized that by sharing her struggles, she not only helped herself, but also inspired others to open up. This made her feel stronger and more confident in her own skin. One day, after a study group meeting with Anna, Maya decided it was time to apply the lessons she had learned. She sat at her desk and began to write a letter to her classmates, explaining how she felt and how empathy could change the dynamics of the school. As she put her emotions on paper, she felt a sense of liberation. The letter was not just a venting of feelings, but a way to invite everyone to reflect on their attitudes. On the day she delivered the letter, she was nervous, but when she saw her classmates' reactions, she was surprised. Many approached her, thanking her for having the courage to talk about something everyone felt, but few dared to discuss. That connection made Maya realize that she was not alone in her insecurities. Everyone was struggling in some way, and empathy could be the key to transforming the school into a more welcoming place. Time passed, and with each new challenge, Maya felt stronger. The laughter and whispers that once affected her began to lose their power. She understood that the words of others would not define who she was. True change began within her, With each small step, each new friend she made, Maya was rebuilding her life, no longer as a victim, but as a leader. And alongside Brandon, who was also transforming, Maya saw that friendship could be a powerful support. He encouraged her to keep going, to be the best version of herself. Together, they became an example that change is possible, even when it seems difficult. Maya's journey was not just about overcoming her fears, but about becoming a voice for those who were still silent. Thus, with renewed courage and a new perspective, Maya moved forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that each challenge was an opportunity to become even stronger. And, looking to the future, she realized that true success was in living authentically, helping others, and cultivating friendships that truly mattered. Maya was about to face her biggest challenge. After weeks of progress, engaging in activities at school and building new friendships, she still felt that there was a shadow looming over her life. The whispers and glances from some classmates bothered her more than she would like to admit. The fear of being judged, of being seen as the fragile girl she had been, still followed her. One day, during recess, Maya found herself in a situation that made her feel she could no longer hide. A group of students was laughing and pointing at a new student, a boy who clearly looked nervous and uncomfortable. Upon hearing some hurtful comments, something stirred within her. The memories of her own pain flooded back, and she realized she couldn't stand by while someone was going through the same experience she had faced. Brandon, who was by her side, noticed the change in Maya's expression. He encouraged her to stand up and speak out, but a part of her hesitated. The fear of exposing herself again was strong, but Anna's words echoed in her mind. You can't let the fear of the past define what you can live in the future. With a deep breath, Maya decided it was time to act. She approached the group and with a firm voice asked them to stop. Hey, that's not right. He's just trying to fit in, just like all of us. We shouldn't laugh at someone for being different. Silence fell over the area. All eyes turned to her, and in that moment Maya felt the adrenaline rush through her veins. It was the first time she had positioned herself so openly, and the vulnerability left her exposed, but also powerful. Some students began to murmur, divided between supporting Maya or continuing with the teasing. The tension was palpable. The new student looked at Maya, his eyes filled with gratitude, but also surprise. He hadn't expected anyone to care. Brandon beside him placed his hand on his shoulder, a silent gesture of support. Maya took a deep breath and continued. We've all been through tough times. What we need is empathy, not judgment. What if we all tried to be a little kinder to each other? We don't have to hurt each other, we can help each other. Her words floated in the air, and to her surprise, some students began to move, changing their stance. It was at that moment that one of the boys who had made the hurtful comment stepped forward. He looked at Maya, and in a low voice said, "Sorry, I didn't think it would hurt anyone." The acknowledgement of his fault caused others to reflect as well. The atmosphere began to shift, and one by one the students started to apologize to the boy. The scene unfolding before her was almost surreal. The group, which had once been a place of cruel laughter, was now transforming into a space of understanding. Maya felt a warmth in her chest, a sense that she was making a difference. The courage she had found had freed her from her insecurities. With the new student now surrounded by classmates introducing themselves and offering friendship, Maya realized that the conflict that had tormented her for so long was finally resolving. She was no longer the girl hiding behind insecurities. She was a voice for change, someone who could inspire others to be better. Looking at Brandon, she saw pride in his eyes. Their friendship had solidified in that moment, and the experience had brought them even closer together. Together, they had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. Maya understood that just like her, many people were fighting their own fears, and that empathy could be the bridge that united them. By the end of that day, as she walked home, Maya reflected on what had happened. She had overcome her fears and found her voice. The true wealth was not in material possessions or in the approval of others, but in the human connections she created. She realized that each challenge, each failure, was an opportunity to grow and learn. Maya had transformed. The journey of starting over was no longer about escaping the past, but about embracing the future with courage and compassion. Looking at the horizon, she knew that her story didn't end there. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, where friendship, empathy, and inner strength would always be her allies. Maya was emotional when she got home. The day had been intense and transformative, and she still felt the adrenaline pulsing through her veins. As she entered, Her mother noticed the radiant expression on her daughter's face. "What happened, dear? You look so happy." Maya smiled, feeling lighter than ever. "Mum, today I helped a new classmate at school. He was being bullied and I stood up for him." Maya's mother hugged her, proud. "That's wonderful, daughter. I'm so happy you found the courage to make a difference." As they talked, Maya began to understand that her decision to stand up had changed not only the life of the new student, but also her own. The fear that had once paralyzed her was dissipating, and in its place was a new sense of purpose. In the days that followed, school became a different place for Maya. She and Brandon grew closer, sharing laughter and stories. The new student, named Lucas, befriended them and began to feel more comfortable. The other students also seemed more aware of their actions. The cruel teasing decreased, and an atmosphere of friendship began to blossom. One morning, while waiting for the bell to ring, Maya noticed a group of students talking about what had happened. She felt a flutter in her stomach, but upon hearing some laughter and positive comments, she realized that her courage had made an impact. "I think what Maya did was amazing," said a girl. "She really showed that we should all be kinder." Maya smiled, feeling welcomed. It was the first time she felt part of something bigger, not just a bystander. The conversations around her were encouraging and supportive. That change was not just about Lucas, but about everyone who was willing to be better. She remembered Anna's words. Empathy could create bonds between people. In the classroom, the teacher noticed the change in atmosphere. "Do you remember what happened last week with Lucas?" he asked. Maya's attitude was inspiring. "Sometimes it takes courage to do what is right. I want everyone to think about how they can contribute to a more welcoming environment." This statement made Maya feel a warmth in her heart. It was gratifying to know that her action was generating meaningful reflections. Later, she and Lucas talked during recess. "Thank you for standing up for me, Maya," he said with a shy smile. "I really didn't expect anyone to care." Maya felt a wave of empathy. "We all have our battles. The important thing is that we're together now." They exchanged stories about their experiences, and Maya realized that Lucas had faced similar challenges. That night, as she prepared for bed, Maya reflected on how her life had changed. The fear and insecurity that had once accompanied her were transforming into strength and confidence. She remembered the moment she stood up for Lucas and how it had freed her. It was as if a new version of herself had emerged, someone who was no longer afraid to be seen. At school, the change in attitude did not go unnoticed. Students began to gather in small groups to talk and share experiences. Maya was delighted to see the friendship grow among the students. Stories of overcoming challenges and support were told and retold, reinforcing the idea that empathy could truly change lives. One afternoon, while walking home after school, Brandon commented, "Maya, have you realized how much you've impacted all of us? You were the change you wanted to see." Maya smiled but also felt a weight of responsibility. "I hope we can keep this going. I don't want it to end." Brandon nodded, showing that he too was committed to making a difference. Maya realized that by facing her fears, she had created a new space for herself and her peers. They were no longer just students, they were a community, and with that, each of them began to feel freer to be who they really were. Maya's journey was not just about her own transformation, but a wave of change that affected everyone around her. As she looked at the sky at dusk, Maya knew her story was just beginning. She had learned that true strength lay in connecting with others, and that together they could face any challenge. Empathy and friendship were the pillars that would sustain this new phase of their lives, and she was ready to embrace every moment. Maya reflected on her journey as she walked home, with the sun setting behind the mountains. What started as an ordinary day had turned into a series of events that changed her life and that of her classmates. By standing up for Lucas, she not only defended herself, but also freed herself from a fear that had accompanied her for a long time. The courage she found within herself had unleashed a wave of empathy in the school, transforming the atmosphere of hostility into a place of welcome and friendship. As the weeks went by, the connection among the students strengthened. What had once been a divided space had become a refuge of mutual support. Maya remembered how she used to feel invisible, but now she was surrounded by new friends who encouraged her. Each laugh, each heartfelt conversation was a reminder that true friendship could flourish anywhere, even in the most unlikely circumstances. Lucas, who had once felt isolated, was now part of the group. He and Maya became inseparable, always ready to help each other. Maya's courage inspired other students to stand up too, and gradually, The school began to transform into a space where kindness and empathy prevailed. However, the journey was not without challenges. A group of students still resisted the change, and in a moment of desperation, they decided to retaliate, cruelly provoking Maya and her friends. The situation intensified when Maya decided she would not stand by while her friends were attacked. She remembered how empathy had changed her life and how she could use that to help Lucas and others who felt threatened. With the help of Brandon and Lucas, they organized a meeting at school where everyone was invited to share their experiences of bullying and the lessons learned. The idea was simple yet powerful, to transform pain into collective strength. On the day of the meeting, the room was full. Students from all groups gathered, and the atmosphere was charged with emotion. Maya, nervous, stood up and began to speak. She shared her own story of overcoming challenges, how she had faced her fears, and how friendship had transformed her. When she finished, the silence was broken by applause and words of support. That meeting became a milestone in the school, and the group of students who had once intimidated others now found themselves surrounded by the strength of the community. After the meeting, the group that had tried to retaliate was surprised to see that their actions had not shaken Maya's friends' unity. They realized that true strength lay in solidarity and friendship. What started as an act of revenge against bullying transformed into a movement for change. Maya and her friends, now closer than ever, showed that they could overcome any challenge together. In the end, Maya felt a deep satisfaction. She had found her purpose and transformed not only her life but also the lives of many others. True success was not just about winning, but about learning and growing from each experience. The life lessons she and her friends had learned were invaluable. Empathy and friendship can change the world around us. Now Maya wanted to invite everyone to reflect on their own experiences. Each of us has the power to make a difference, and the time to act is now. Share your stories, your struggles, and your victories. Together we can create a safe and welcoming space for all. Like and subscribe so that more stories like this reach you. Let's spread empathy and friendship, because change begins when we decide to come together.